Brian May and Kerry Ellis coming in next. It's 11 minutes past 6, BBC Radio 2. Brian May, good evening.
Good evening, Simon.
Kerry Ellis, good evening.
Good evening, hello.
Now, just before we get on to your current project, still, what a fantastic song that is.
Thank you.
I noticed something when I was just lining it up and listening to it at the start, which I'd never, ever noticed before. I'm just going to put it in again, just turn it up.
Yeah, this is good spotting on your part.
Right at the very beginning, it sounds as though someone in the band goes, "Oh," like that. Hang on, so let's just play it and then you can tell us what's happening. Here we go. There. Someone goes...
Yeah, the reason is because there was a lot of long delays on that, and there's a count, 1, 2, 3, 4, so you're hearing the end of the word 4, and it comes back again. It actually comes back again if you really, really listen.
Okay.
Which is amazing. But that's good spotting, yeah. You might not even... So, yeah, lots of delays to make the big clap sounds, the big stamp sounds. It was just us hitting boards and clapping. There's no...
So,
there's no machines in those days to do... Well, you have to...
Hang on, I need to find the 4. Okay, so this is a 4. These things matter to me, okay? I like to get it...
Anyway, moving on.
No, I know. Okay, just one last time, okay. Well, it doesn't sound like a 4 to me, but you were there, so you should probably... Now, the reason I play that, apart from that, is that it is relevant to the fact that you're here together, and we'll play your new song in just a moment. Just explain, Kerry, how you met in the first place and how you came to be recording together.
Oh, it's a long time ago now,
Yeah.
but yes, the musical, I guess, brought us together. We Will Rock You. I was actually in another musical.
It was My Fair Lady, wasn't it, to start with?
I was, yes, and Brian came along to see it and asked me to audition. That was kind of over 14 years ago now, so...
Did you go with a specific reason, Brian? Had you heard good things, or did you just go because it's a great musical?
No, first time I just went because we had friends in it, actually, and sort of spotted Kerry. We were just at the point where we were thinking, how are we going to get our cast and what are we looking for and stuff, and I thought, my God, that's an amazing performer, But the second time we went to see it, we had a purpose, yeah. We'd already spoken to our casting agent who knew Kerry, so we were well on it, and I went with Mike Dixon, our MD. And, yeah,
I didn't know nothing about it, though.
We actually kind of booked her on the spot, but she still came in and auditioned. So.
7 times.
You auditioned 7 times?
Yeah, I know.
Nah, she's making it up.
That audition process is still... It's got to be one of the cruelest things, though, hasn't it? Great if you get it, but, the ones that you don't get, that's a nasty way to...
It's gruelling, but I guess, it's part of our lives. It's what we do. I think most actors, performers, singers are so used to auditioning. It's part of what we do, and you just have to get over it, I think. And there are obviously good outcomes and bad outcomes.
That's right. Okay, so it's My Fair Lady, and then it's We Will Rock You. And then it all went crazy from there, and you're recording together. So... Whose idea was that, Brian, to actually start doing songs together?
Well, it happened because we did the cast album, and Kerry was singing the big torch song of the show, really, which is No One But You. That's the big ballad. That's the point where people really suddenly realise there's some kind of point to the whole thing. And Kerry did it night after night, amazing. And then we did the cast album, and then we started to mix it, and Kerry came down to do that. And we tried a few things out. That's all it was. I mean, I was struck. I mean, she's an amazing talent, so I was thinking that would be great. And I didn't have Freddie, you have to think, So, and I'd been through a whole period. You just heard Driven by You. That was a period where I thought I could sing. But actually, I kind of decided... Yeah, I can, to a point I can. But I'm a guitarist and a producer and a writer and an arranger, and I want someone to bounce off, So
Did someone ever say to you, Brian, maybe don't? I mean, because that's, it's a great record. People love hearing it every time we put it on. It gets a fantastic response, but...
Oh, loads of people said don't, yeah.
Who's going to say... who's going to say to you, don't sing?
No, it's just a... I was sort of in a grieving process, because it was like, yeah, Freddie's gone and Queen's gone, and I never want to hear about that again. And I went out and did 2 massive solo tours, long tours, with Cozy Powell, first of all, and I lost Cozy, so there's a whole, kind of... catalogue of great stuff experimentally, but also of disaster in a way, because I did a lot of grieving after Cozy as well. And then eventually I thought, well, actually we spent 30 years of our life building Queen, our sort of dream vehicle, so why would I be running away from it? And then you start to think, well, okay, it's okay, I don't mind talking about it anymore.
So, and what are you thinking, Kerry, at this time? Are you thinking, wow, this is Brian and he wants to make albums with me?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of happened quite slowly. I mean, obviously we were in the studio at that time, but we didn't then suddenly jump in the studio and make an album. It was a really kind of slow progressional process, because obviously I was going on to do other musicals and Brian was incredibly busy. So we would kind of schedule random studio days when we had some free time and discover what was right for us. And it did take a while because obviously we were from these different worlds. I was doing musicals and it was new to me to be in a studio, and I didn't know the direction that was right for me. And I think we're still discovering, the albums that we make and the tours that we've done are always changing and always kind of, we're trying out new stuff all the time. And I think that's what makes us interesting and to perform and make music together. I think is great fun.
Brian, tell us, so we'll play One Voice. Tell us about this. Where did this come from?
One Voice has a very interesting genesis. I didn't write the song. I wish I had. It's a great song. I think it's a real torch song, One Voice. It's a sort of rallying song. And it was sent to me on an email by a guy I'd never met and never heard of. And he said, will you play on this track? Because it's going to be the theme track for a movie about a dog that was abused, and how there's a whole story of how it changed the laws in America of abuse to animals. So it's a great project. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And then as usual, I'm a precocious boy, and I thought, I can do this better. And I thought of Kerry. I thought, we could do a version which is very different, which has a different kind of feel to it. And it would be very good for my campaigning. So sort of selfishly, I had a number of reasons for doing it. So we went in and did it. It's a fantastic song, I think. And the version we've done starts off very small, very kind of folky, and then it gets very big at the end. But I used it as a sort of rallying song for the campaign for Common Decency, which was my little brainchild leading up to the election, and I wasn't allowed. The funny thing was I wasn't allowed to use it because you get this whole Ofcom thing. You're not allowed to do anything that could be interpreted as political in those days coming up to the election, which really ties your hands. So we put the record out and it was very well received in our community, but we couldn't really go for radio play or anything because everyone was kind of afraid of it.
Okay, well,
now we can.
Now you can. And this is the song. It's One Voice, Brian May and Kerry Ellis.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one. This is the sound of one voice.
Brian May and Kerry Ellis with One Voice, and we'll talk more with them in just a second.
Join me to celebrate the decade that had everything. Monday nights from 10 on BBC Radio 2.
I've been a champion for this programme, Brian and Kerry. I have to say that sounds the 50s program. If you get a chance to listen to it on iPlayer or live when it goes out on Monday night, it's fantastic. You can just tell from all those.
Yeah, they're brilliant.
Amazing. That's my time.
No, it's not. That
Fabulous
wasn't your
songs.
time. You're not. You don't remember the 50s.
You reckon?
Do you?
Yeah.
What's the earliest thing that you actually remember musically?
Oh, musically? Probably Little Richard and Buddy Holly laying in bed pretending to be asleep but having one little crystal set under the covers and those guys coming on. Amazing time. We were so lucky.
Well, Art Garfunkel was on a couple of weeks ago and he was talking about tuning into the radio, end of the 50s, beginning of the 60s, all the doo-wop stuff coming out of America and the kind of revolutionary effect that it had. Now, Kerry, of course, being a whole lot younger than that. What was the first thing?
But you know what? It's interesting. I do know a lot of those kind of songs, and I think because they're so melody-driven, and I think they're real songs. They have a verse and a chorus, and you can sing along to them, and you remember them. Where music is different now.
What was the first thing you actually remember hearing or owning or hearing your parents play? Or?
Oh, my God, it was probably one of the Now albums. Now, I don't know.
See, she's a kid, Brian, she's a kid.
I know.
No, yeah, just a baby.
But you did, but on your 13th birthday, off to see Les Mis, and I imagine that was sort of like one of those moments, like hearing rock and roll on the radio for Brian. That's going to affect a young, musically inclined woman.
Yeah, massively. I mean, that was really poignant for me, and Les Mis has gone on to be a big part of my life. So, it was very poignant. I did have musicals, on tape. It was then, but I also had. We had Queen. My dad had Status Quo. We had the Beatles. We had, but then I had people like Streisand and Liza Minnelli, and so I had a real eclectic mix.
Yeah, your dad's a rocker.
My dad's a rocker, yeah.
David in Colchester, Simon, that was a lovely song with Brian and Kerry. That collaboration really works. Well, there's more because you've got a new album you're working on.
We're working on Anthems II. Yeah, the first album we did together was Anthems
Don,
Which took a while.
Don says Kerry is fantastic. Loved her work in chess. And the new one sounds
Thank
great.
you.
That made me cry.
Oh, cool.
One imagines in a good way.
I hope so.
That's nice.
Andy in Manchester. Brian took lead vocals on a track or two on most Queen albums. Always enjoyed it. My favourite is Long Away from A Day at the Races.
Yeah, thank you.
So, could you ask Brian whether Queen considered asking George Michael to sing with them on a more permanent basis? He'd have been good, says David in Marlborough.
He was fabulous at the tribute. Yeah, no, briefly, no, not really, because George was headed in a different direction, a very sort of bossa nova type direction. He could have been a rock star. I mean, he has the voice to do that power stuff, but he didn't want to, basically, and that's fine. You know, we stayed friends, and then that's it.
So, presumably, this recording that you were doing together, you fitted in between doing Broadway and West End and all your other projects. So it's like it's an ongoing relationship. As and when it fits you both.
Whenever it can happen, yeah.
And I think that's what's nice about it, is we go off and do our things, and then we kind of bring together our experiences. And I think that's why our albums have been so varied.
Simon Leaf on this email. My daughter Isla recently met Sir Brian.
Sir Brian.
I must have missed that.
Of course,
Are you
I think
Sir?
I missed that.
When she was doing a work experience at the Cats musical at the Palladium. Sir Brian took time to talk to her and allowed her to have a selfie with him. Could you pass on my thanks? Needless to say, we got lots of Queen's music.
Brilliant.
In the house. Thing is, a selfie is a whole lot longer than signing an autograph, isn't it? You have to pose and smile. And
These days, and then the camera doesn't work, does it? So you got to sit there while they fiddle around with the camera. That is life these days, and everybody has a camera, yeah. And then they want you to talk to their mum. You know, it goes on.
Grant in Solihull, Simon, I'm a massive Brian May fan, to the point where my daughter's middle name is May.
Oh, yeah.
There's a thing.
Oh, wonderful.
There's a funny story from years back when she was about 7 and I had a spare ticket for Queen and Paul Rodgers, so I chose to take my darling daughter along with me. Cut a long story short, I noticed whilst Brian was doing Brighton Rock, a certain young lady was fast asleep in the chair. She's going to be 18 on the 19th of July, which is the same as Brian's. Anyway, a big shout out to Brian.
Great. I have a good effect on a lot of people like that.
When you've been around for that amount of time, Brian, you will have people who have life stories. You know that they will have, they will have named children after you. You know they will.
It is amazing to become a sort of national treasure or something. You know, you feel a bit like a tourist attraction sometimes. And I know I am grateful. I am very grateful for everything that's happened. It's just it's strange. Sometimes you wake up and think, God, how did all that happen? You know?
And do you think of all that as still an ongoing project? And because it worked, everybody thought Adam Lambert was a fantastic addition to the band. Is that ongoing?
We'll be doing a few dates in South America in September and October. Yeah, it is ongoing, I guess. But, you know, spasmodically, periodically, when he has the time and we have the time. I don't think it can be his career, but it's a great thing for the time being.
But if you wrote a new song, would it be more likely to end up with Kerry than it would be as a Queen song?
Well, that's an interesting question. There would be, I don't know, you know, either or both, you know, hopefully, yeah. I've written some stuff for Kerry, which I've really enjoyed. And it does, as she says, it takes me in a different direction because I'm sort of slightly moved towards the musical side of things, you know, which I shunned as a kid. You know, I never liked musicals at all. I thought I hated musicals. And then I heard West Side Story and thought, can't hate that.
No, absolutely.
And then you start to realise I'm a bit of a convert. Yeah, no, I haven't written as much as I used to recently, and I think it's something I'd like to get back to. I got too involved in trying to save animals, probably. You know, it really does take over your life once you perceive the need for something to be pursued that hard.
Brian, we appreciate you coming in. Kerry, very nice to meet you. Thank you very much indeed. And Anthems II, do you have any idea when that's going to be around? Or?
Well, we're back in the studio kind of over the summer, and we've worked on bits already, so who knows?
Yeah, I would say end of the year or beginning of next year. We're not going to rush it, but we have some good stuff already.
Yeah.
Kerry and Brian, thank you very much indeed.
Thank
you.